Welcome to the program. John Lehmann, Editor-at-Large for the Daily Telegraph. Thanks for your company.
Oh, yeah.
All right, let me start with your headline, John Lehmann. Not that you wrote it, but Tony back in the game. No, he's not. The Liberal Party are back in the game, the Coalition are back in the game, but Tony Abbott's personal ratings are a disaster.
Maybe not, but I mean, what did come through very clearly on his personal ratings was the economy and terrorism, where he's very, very strong. And you'd have to think in the next election, if he makes it that far, there'll be two major issues. And the more the government can talk about those issues, the better he'll go. But you'd have to say, Peter, after what he's gone through, to have a result like that is absolutely extraordinary.
But what about the timing of it, Osman? I mean, could he be any more unlucky than to actually have a decent polling outcome? He was, as he said himself, you know, feeling pretty strong and uplifted this morning when he did morning television about the poll. Of course, keep in mind, politicians of all persuasions always tell us that you should never talk about the polls, but then they always do when they do well. In your view, though, this leak that came in is a shocker for him.
Yeah, definitely drowned it out. But I think the other point to make is that while it's definitely their best result in 4 months, they're still going to get smashed if that result's replicated at the federal election. But remember, we've got a test coming up before that. We've got March 28th, the state election, and the Galaxy poll published over the weekend by the Daily Telegraph showed that the coalition government's facing an 11% swing against them. I think that's probably the thing that's concerning Liberals more than any polling about the federal election.
OK, but these leaks, John, these leaks that we see over and over again, another one today, there'll be more. There were leaks out of the party room today as well. They are at a point where clearly there are forces in the Liberal Party that are trying to damage the Prime Minister. In a discussion.
And it seems quite a significant force, and to have a letter like that written by the Honorary Treasurer and sent to so many people, I think you only send it to that many people if you want it leaked. So that was something that was almost, you know, calculated to leak out and damage the Prime Minister. And I think while there is this great force moving against the Prime Minister, his days are numbered. And I think that's actually really quite sad, because if the government could just stick together and start focusing on the big issues, I still think there's a chance he could find himself back in the game. The ratings against Bill Shorten in that latest poll are really quite negative.
That is a good
and people
point.
are starting to think now, do we want Bill Shorten as the next Prime Minister? And that might be something that does work in Abbott's favour.
I tell you this right now, Bill Shorten would be having massive problems with his own leadership were it not for two phenomena. One, the new mechanism which makes it almost impossible to get rid of him mid-term, and two, Tony Abbott. Bill Shorten's best friend at the moment is Tony Abbott, which is why it's interesting to watch as the opposition does what it has to do, I suppose, and puts pressure on Tony Abbott, which could deliver Malcolm Turnbull. Be careful what you wish for, Bill Shorten. All right, Sharri Markson's here. I wanted to come up on set, but they're too professional in the control room. It's going to crackle and all the rest of it. So we're going to show this story and then we're going to discuss it. We're going to do that anyway. Human Rights Commission President Gillian Triggs has accused the government of attempting to motivate her to resign her post by offering the opportunity of other legal work. The Prime Minister says that he's lost confidence in Professor Triggs, claiming that her report into children in immigration detention was a political stitch-up.
It was a tense hearing with the Attorney-General and the Commission President at the same witness table, and evidence presented that earlier this year Gillian Triggs sought the Attorney's views about her role. In return, she received a request delivered by the Department Secretary.
The nature of that request was to ask for my resignation.
And according to the Secretary, a potential employment offer as well.
The government would be prepared to consider positively a senior legal role for her, which was specifically mentioned.
Professor Triggs declined to call it an inducement. Rather, she said, a basis for motivation.
A reason that somebody might agree to resign their position and knowing that they would be perhaps secure in some other position.
Other senators weren't so forgiving.
This sounds like a bribe. Smells like a bribe, sounds like a bribe. What we're trying to work out is whether it is.
Whatever it was, the Commission President refused the offer emphatically.
I thought it was a disgraceful proposal. The very idea of resigning would threaten the entire reputation and independence of the Commission in a way which would have dramatic effect.
The Attorney-General didn't deny any such offer was made.
But I would be glad for Professor Triggs to be of service to the Australian government.
But made clear his view about her decision to launch an investigation into children in immigration detention after the coalition won government.
I'm afraid the fate of the Commission, the reputation of the Commission, will not survive the reputation for political partisanship, which I'm sorry to say that Professor Triggs has given it.
The position of Commission President is a government appointment, but is meant to be free from political interference. Professor Triggs still has more than 2 years to serve in the role. The government now blunt in its view her position is not tenable.
This government has lost confidence in the President of the Human Rights Commission.
David Lipson, Sky News, Canberra.
All right, we'll go to Sharri. Markson, welcome to the program. I'll ask you in the next segment what you were doing in terms of what you're writing about for the Oz Tomorrow. I'm guessing it's in the media space. You are the media editor.
Definitely.
But on this, with Gillian Triggs. Now, the Australian and other organisations have gone pretty hard at her at different moments in time, none more so than the Prime Minister, it has to be said. He says the government has no confidence in her. As Bill Shorten asked in question time, if they've got no confidence in her, why are they trying to offer her another job?
Well, I think it's probably right that they have no confidence in her. She waited until the coalition was in government before deciding to call an inquiry into children in detention when, as we know, the numbers were highest under Labor. And Malcolm Turnbull pointed those figures out really clearly on Q&A a couple of weeks ago. There were about 2,000 children in detention under Labor. It's dropped to about 194, 196 at last count. And yet, when the moves were in place, that's when she decides to hold an inquiry. So it's definitely partisan. Plus, she went to Chris Bowen and Tony Burke when they were in government and said, what do you think about an inquiry? They obviously pushed back on it, but yet she didn't give the coalition government ministers the opportunity, to discuss it with them. She just sent them a notice saying we're going to have an inquiry. So I understand why Abbott would be concerned.
But then why would he try to find her another job?
Well,
I mean, if she's so bad, wouldn't you just...
Surely it wouldn't be another senior job. It would be another role somewhere in the government, so she wouldn't be, with no employment.
He couldn't have any confidence in her if he's got no confidence in her in a senior job.
But haven't they just tried
confidence in her in a junior job?
They just tried to play nice and tried to get a result here without the massive bloodbath, and maybe they would have been better off just paying out a contract and moving on.
There's a couple of interesting things here. One, look, I think she's got problems. I think the Prime Minister has overstepped the mark, but I think she has equally shown elements of partisanship. I don't think that's an unfair characterisation in some respects, although I'm not sure that Tony Abbott should be delivering it as strongly as he has. Osman, you're a Green. You're not going to agree with almost anything that Sharri just said then, but here's a question for you. In the party room, Craig Laundy, we see reported today, had a crack at the Prime Minister, not over the core issue of children, exactly as Sharri's just said, on that score. His point was, that's what the government should be talking about. Don't attack her, just respond by saying, hey, we've dropped it from 2,000 to 200. We are the ones doing something about this phenomenon in this report of yours that uncovers some terrible things that we need to try to look more at. Thoughts?
Look, I think the government's strategy in this was obviously to distract from the actual guts of the report itself and to focus on the person, Gillian Triggs. What's been lost in the debate that we've been having over the past couple of weeks about whether it's a partisan report or not is that 44 children were sexually abused in the past 12 months. That came out of estimates on Monday.
But we can walk and chew gum at the same time. This is my point about this. I don't entirely like ignoring the report, as I know you don't, but I equally don't like ignoring the timing of it. But don't you think that there's a legitimate point about that, even though it should not overshadow, it should be in unison with, in my view, some of the terrible things within the report?
But I think there's two bits. Obviously, there's a bit of hypocrisy around the government's position. I mean, this is the government that got rid of Graham Innes, the Disability Commissioner, and instead replaced him with Tim Wilson, someone who the government calls the Freedom Commissioner, who's got strong links to the Liberal Party and, groups like the IPA closely associated with the Liberal Party. So it's not as though the government's got clean hands when it comes to the issue about partisanship, but clearly the Abbott government's agenda when it came to attacking Gillian Triggs last week was about distracting from the report itself, from the fact that this government has got almost 200 children locked up behind razor wire on remote Pacific Islands.
John Lehmann?
Well, how many were locked up under Labor?
2,000, that's outrageous as well, and the report makes it very clear.
No report.
The report
into the 200.
I mean, in fairness, this 200-page report did slam Labor.
Absolutely.
And that's, I think, a point that Tony Abbott loses when he's right about timing. He's wrong to not acknowledge that the report does also slam Labor, and frankly, slams Labor harder than the coalition, as it well should. Sharri, in your view, though, why are they offering her another job?
Well, just on that point, though, I think, as you say, it's the timing of the report and it's the fact that children in detention has become such a big political issue for Tony Abbott. So it's not exactly that the nature of the report was necessarily too partisan.
But I'm critical of the timing. But I say the same thing on the flip side to you that I say to Osman, which is that we can walk and chew gum at the same time.
I completely agree, and I think the issue needs to be looked at, and I think we should have no children in detention, totally. But in terms of offering her another job, I mean, maybe it's a lawyer in, a department at some low level, know, 60 grand a year. Who knows?
Well, we
don't know
need
what
to
the job
get to
is
the
yet.
bottom of this, don't we?
They're calling it an inducement, so presumably there's got to be something attractive about it to entice her to take it, but we don't know what the job is.
Yeah, we've got to be careful with that term because Labor, I think, used that term in the Parliament.
She was careful not to.
She was careful to walk away from that. But they would have. You couldn't offer her anything less than a pretty significant appointment, a judicial appointment, quite frankly. It's almost a quasi-judicial appointment to be president of where she is now. She was the Dean of Law at Sydney Uni.
Yeah.
John?
Maybe so, but I think go back to what Craig Laundy said, and I think this is where the politics of the matter is. The politics is not really about this report, and it's not really about Professor Triggs. It's about the fact that the boats have stopped coming. This is an opportunity to speak about that again.
That's where the government should be focusing. That's what Craig Laundy's point was.
Exactly right, and he's a man who speaks like he knows he's got to win his seat.
No argument.
The story that came, part of the reason why it was a success, and this also got missed in all the heat of today, the Sri Lankan government, the new Sri Lankan government have confirmed that the Abbott government had a deal with the Rajapaksa regime that actually saw the Sri Lankan government use their military, their navy, to stop asylum boats leaving in return for Tony Abbott and his government to not call for a human rights investigation. So this is all the stuff that's happening in the background. That's a huge international story that isn't really being covered here because the focus is on Gillian Triggs
and can't cover it now because we need to take a commercial break. And we're going to come back to more important things like Darren Hinch not wanting to pay a fine when he doesn't vote. We'll be talking about that eventually, not straight away. You're watching PVO News Hour. When we come back, Tony Abbott stands by Peter Credlin despite new leaks revealing a major rift with the Liberal Party over her role.
You don't need to be a big business to get the best possible travel rates for your business. You just need to bring an expert on board. A business travel expert dedicated to saving you time and money. At Corporate Traveller, we offer 24/7 service, real savings, flexible payment options and clear reporting. And there's not even a contract to sign. Some business decisions just make good sense, don't they? Corporate Traveller. It makes sense to bring an expert on board.
The latest addition to our huge range of wheel brands and sizes, the new Oscar Apex starting at just $99. See our catalogue or website for all our hot wheel deals. At Bob Jane T-Marts, we'll look after you.
It's a moment of discovery. The zest of fresh lime. A twang. Cut by a sharpness. And the heat of black pepper. That's what they taste like to me. Lime and black pepper potato chips from Red Rock Deli.
Huge warehouse sale at Barbecues Galore. Stainless steel hooded 4-burner barbie with side burner, less than half price, $3.49. Half price for this swivel chair, only $2.99. And just $2.99 for this pizza oven, save $200. Huge warehouse sale, but only at Barbecues Galore.
Breaking the hold of nicotine helped me quit smoking.
Talk to your doctor today about treatment options with and without nicotine, or visit nailquitting.com.au.
Sergey, come in, Sergey. I'll Zarya.
Yes, Mr. Alexander.
Our mission is to uncover why Australians still visit our website looking for good health insurance deal.
Okay.
With the health insurance rate rise, our goal is to find customers the best policy from a wide range of funds.
Please buy health insurance from Compare the Market. Simple.
If every line translates to movement, if you leave only the essential, and harness technology to awaken the senses, then you connect the surface of the road to the hair on your skin. Voila! That's the purpose of Peugeot design. Experience the 4008 SUV with auto transmission and rear camera from $29,990 drive away.
Southeast Asia is on sale for 1 week only, with fabulous flight deals to every destination you book. But only until midnight Saturday, and only at Webjet.
Welcome back to watching PVO News Hour. We'll get the panel's thoughts in a moment on our top story, but let's start by looking at all the top stories. The Prime Minister is standing by his Chief of Staff, Peter Credlin, despite a new leak revealing a major rift between top Liberal Party officials over her role. Tony Abbott says that the Human Rights Commission President Gillian Triggs has lost the confidence of the government and the recent inquiry into children in detention was a political stitch-up. A last-ditched legal effort to save Mayuran Sukumaran and Andrew Chan from execution has failed, with a Jakarta court deciding it isn't authorised to examine their latest challenge. All right, before we move on to some state or territory issues that are in the mix, Sharri, let me get your thoughts on this top story, I suppose, which is the whole problem with the leaking against Peter Credlin. We have the Federal Treasury, in my editorial, I slammed him for sexism, for likening her to a personal or an executive assistant. That was clearly had sexist connotations to it, and it also was, if nothing else, at least deliberately demeaning. She's the Chief of Staff to the PM, but she is struggling, and this leak is symptomatic of problems. Where do we go from here?
Well, I don't know that she personally is struggling. I think her and Brian Loughnane did a brilliant job over the past 5 years of getting Abbott to the position.
But she's struggling since she's been in government.
I don't think her performance is struggling. I think, you know, as I've said before, she's a key reason why Abbott has done so well up until this point. But clearly, there's an HR issue. There's massive angst around her being in that role and the way she runs the office and the way she deals with the backbench. I feel uncomfortable about it because I know what a tough woman she is and how brilliant at her job she is, and I can't.
What's she brilliant at? I must say, I've seen this editorialised around the place that she's some sort of policy wonk and good at her job. Well, give me an example. In government, I mean, no questions about in opposition.
Worked in the office myself, but you can only see what Tony Abbott was like previously. You can see how loose and undisciplined he was.
But he was a good minister. He was a good minister, but then in opposition, I give her 100% credit for being a very good opposition Chief of Staff, but I see little to no evidence in government.
Well, it is clearly a problem, and the backbench have a problem with her, and they're terrified of her, and they don't want to work for her, and they don't want to deal with her. So now that problems are emerging with Abbott's government, she has become, as Julie Bishop said this morning, the lightning rod for it.
Lightning rod for discontent, but she's not going to go, is she?
Well, something has to change. Abbott's not going to move on her, so as you suggested a moment ago, John Lehmann, you know, perhaps they'll die in the ditch together.
Well, here's this is the big question. Let me open this up. Almost yes or no for you all, with a maybe, I suppose, if you want to sit on the fence. If she doesn't go, and it looks like she won't, and everybody seems to say that she won't, if she won't go, will that result in the downfall of Tony Abbott as Prime Minister? You can get $5.20 on him to even be Prime Minister by the time of the next election at Betfair, I think it is. That is an extraordinary figure for an incumbent first-term Prime Minister. Yeah. John?
I think the forces within the party are moving against her and against the Prime Minister to such an extent now that at some point he will go unless there's something that we haven't seen changing.
Osman?
Yeah, it seems hard to see him sticking around, which is extraordinary given that a large part of why he's there is because of the mess of the last one.
You're not a commentator. Why don't you put some money on Betfair? I'd put $1,000 on it and say that he will survive, actually.
But you'd lose
not
that
a conflict to do it.
Yeah.
Well, I think he's probably not going to, but $5.20 is almost too good to say no to, but I think as a commentator it's a conflict to do that. Even though I'm spending more time being critical of Tony Abbott than defending him, you wouldn't want to suddenly change your mind when you've thrown $1,000 on it. Sharri?
Interestingly, that's a similar line to what Darren Hinch ran.
We're going to get to that. You're getting ahead. I haven't asked you, actually, before we do move on, what were you writing about for the Oz Tomorrow that made you laugh?
For the Oz Tomorrow, about the ABC and Senate estimates that have been going on since midday today. So definitely by the Australian Tomorrow, Mark Scott, for the first time, finally admits that some of the 400 job losses, the redundancies at the ABC, was so that he could put money into their digital strategy, into iView, into online, into new websites. So it's not just about the budget cuts. You know, there were these huge...
So he finally admitted it on the record.
Finally admitted. There were these huge...
I've written that. I'm sure you have as well.
We've all written it, but he hasn't admitted it. You know, they've been doing these campaigns and protests about the Abbott government budget cuts, and that's why...
Was it like pulling teeth?
Job losses.
To get him to admit it, or did he just say it?
It wasn't. He was asked the question and he said, yeah, part of the 400 job losses were because of the efficiency dividends required by the budget, and the other part were to reinvest in digital services, which he argues is the way of the future.
All right, we're going to move on, though, from media. We're now going to talk about Territorian politics. The no confidence motion in the Northern Territory against the Chief Minister, Adam Giles, has been voted down after a day of debate. But the sacked Education Minister slammed the Chief Minister as untrustworthy and said that leadership tensions are far from over. Sky News' reporter Dan Borcher filed this report from Parliament in Darwin.
The Northern Territory Parliament spent the entire day debating confidence in Adam Giles, the Chief Minister, and his style of leadership in the Territory government. There were blistering attacks from the opposition and the crossbenchers, but the most savage came from a CLP member, Robin Lamley, the sacked former Health Minister, who lost her job over her role in the failed leadership coup. She says that Adam Giles lacks her faith and trust and is arrogant, and that the leadership tensions are far from over.
I do not have faith in the leadership of Adam Giles. I do not have faith in Adam Giles. Adam Giles was voted out of the position of Chief Minister on the 2nd of February 2015, just 22 days ago. 9 members of his team decided that they no longer had faith in his leadership. I believe Adam Giles needs to step down from his position and give us all an opportunity to rebuild before we lose everything. Look at what happened in Queensland just a few weeks ago.
She's the highest profile member of the Country Liberal Party to come out publicly and slam Adam Giles in what's been several months of very tense leadership speculation. But she didn't save her criticism just for the Chief Minister, but also for other members of Cabinet.
I have no faith in the Treasurer, and nor do I believe he is an appropriate person to be a leader in our community.
During her speech, Robin Lamley attacked the Chief Minister for sacking what she said were a gay staffer and a disabled staffer when she lost her job. But staff members that I've spoken to today says that it was shocking that Miss Lamley would go to the depths of politicising the sexuality and ability of people within her office to try and make a point against Adam Giles. Meanwhile, you'd have to think that this leadership tension is far from over, as there continues to be rumblings, not just within the Country Liberals, but within Labor as well. Dan Borcher, Sky News, Darwin.
All right, Osman, you take an unnatural interest in Territorian politics. What's your view on all of that?
Yeah, not so much Territorian politics, but obviously what's going on in the Northern Territory isn't removed from what we're seeing all around the country, federally and in different states. There's been enormous volatility around the country in politics. What we've seen, obviously what's happening in Northern Territory, in Queensland, New South Wales seeing a big swing back, and federally we saw the Labor shambles in the last term of government, what we're seeing with the Liberals now. Something really seems to be going wrong with contemporary Australian politics, and it doesn't really seem like anyone's got the answers.
You know what it is? It's the throwaway generation of voters today, and it's also the political class now being more drawn from the political class, just the lower ranks of it in the staffing levels, and then becoming members of parliament, and then off we roll from there. Less diverse parliaments, it's all having an impact in my view. All right, another issue. Darren Hinch, this is one for you, Sharri, to give me your thoughts on, has told the Melbourne Magistrates Court that he shouldn't have to vote at elections because media commentators should not vote or declare how they vote. There you go. The Sky News host is contesting a $155 fine. I reckon he just doesn't want to pay it, for failing to vote at the last federal election on professional grounds. Mr Hinch told the court that compulsory voting is wrong, undemocratic and unconstitutional. He has previously been fined for failing to vote at the 2010 Victorian state election. Sharri, let me ask you. So we've got this situation where Hinch has described compulsory voting as wrong. Well, he's wrong himself. We don't have compulsory voting. We've only got compulsory getting your name ticked off at the actual booth. You then don't have to put the vote in. You don't have to informal vote. You don't have to register a vote. You don't have to follow the how to vote card, nothing. We don't have compulsory voting.
That's true. I think Darren is correct to say that he probably shouldn't vote. He shouldn't form a view, but just pay the fine. Why the whole court process?
Well, turn up, and you can be there in your PJs for all I care. Yeah, turn up, get your name ticked off, and then be on your way.
But if he did that, he wouldn't be the human headline.
Exactly.
That would be the problem.
And that's the point, isn't it? Now, Sharri, you're the media editor.
Yes.
You know what he's doing here. He's getting media attention, and we just fell for it.
Yep, and he does it often, and he is the human headline. And look, the other tactic to take is the one that another Sky host, Paul Murray, takes, which is he tells the audience which way he votes. So he's very transparent about it. I actually agree with Darren. I've never voted so that I don't form a view, so that I can always say that I'm...
So you don't vote either?
No, I don't vote, but I'm not on the electoral roll, so I'm not going to be
So that's why you don't get fined. Well, if anyone from the AEC is watching, Sharri's not on the electoral roll. I'm not entirely sure whether she's required to be or not, but...
You told me I wasn't required
well,
to be.
yeah, so you'd say it, but come a-looking. We won't get you to give out your address, but anyone from the AEC is wondering, we'll find a way to get that too. John, thoughts?
I think, well, maybe, you know, media commentators who like to express opinions and very strongly held opinions, like potentially Paul Murray or Darren Hinshaw. I think it's not a bad thing to be upfront with the audience and say where your loyalties lie. But I think for journalists who are based in fact-based journalism, who are reporters and try to go about their work in a diligent fashion, I don't think they need to declare where they stand. I think, you know, voting is a very personal thing, and I think it's a good thing that
There's a reason we have the secret ballot. Let's just call a spade a spade.
Recently with Mark Simpkin, when he started working for Tony Abbott's office, we were also surprised. You know, no one knows which way he votes, and that's how it should be.
All right, let's get to the gift that keeps on giving. Craig Thompson's family and friends are helping the former federal MP avoid jail by pitching in and paying the fine that he incurred for stealing union funds to pay for prostitutes. Thompson today applied at the Victorian County Court to make instalment payments on the $25,000 fine. The judge granted his application to make an initial payment of $3,000, followed by a series of instalments to pay the fine within 2 years. The former member for Dobell was convicted of 13 counts of theft following cash withdrawals from a bank account belonging to none other than the Health Services Union between 2003 and 2007, when he was, it's not so honest, National Secretary. Sharri.
Bit of opinion in the news there, not so honest.
At least I'm honest about my opinion being in the news.
Who are his friends? Who does he still have? I mean, are they Labor mates? Are they MPs? I would like to know.
Well, he can't find anything to help him pay his bill. I think that's part of the problem there. But to be honest...
He'd be in a bad space now. I mean,
yeah,
you know...
that's true. But to show no remorse, to actually get off, really, I think, on a technicality, he was very lucky he didn't go to jail over this matter. And then to come to the court today and say, I'll pay $12 a week and clear the debt up in 2056, I just think he's poking fun again at the legal system.
Osman,
I don't sit comfortable with this approach at all.
I'm with John Lehmann on this, Osman. I mean, at the end of the day, it's the lack of remorse that gets me more than anything.
Yeah, look, I think there's fair arguments there, and I think probably a lot of people will look on this and say, look, the bloke's ripped off, you know, union members, not very high-paid union members. Maybe he should be suffering a much higher price. But, look, I'll defer to the judges on this. They're the ones that convicted him, and they're the ones that take all these things, including whether he's remorseful, into account, and they've decided that it's OK. So, I mean, I'll leave it there.
All right, it'd be nice if he paid his fine and got on with life.
Yeah, I guess, yeah.
I mean, his marriage and family life has to be completely affected, if not destroyed, by it, you know.
She stood by him, though, through the trial. I mean, you know...
And he said he's earning $3,000 a month.
I mean, I don't know...
And he's got a mortgage. I mean, his life is continuing on. I think he needs to try a bit harder to pay the debt, or put his hand up and say, you know what, I'll do community service.
Not that I could imagine him getting a job as a lawyer, but he's a trained lawyer. Is that impacted on by this conviction? I suspect it might be.
It must be, surely. I mean, aren't you the legal expert, PVO?
Well, I'm not a lawyer. I studied law for about 5 minutes. All right, we're going to take a slightly early break simply because there's so much going on in sport that is not actually that sport-related, but other than the fact that it's really shockingly so, sports people who are rugby league stars that are doing the wrong thing, amazing, potentially, allegedly, doing the wrong thing. Stay with us here on PVO NewsHour. James Bracey will have all the sport, including, as I say, more on the worrying future for rugby league on the Gold Coast.
Honey, I'm hooked on you. I'm all shook up, it only took a minute or two.
Introducing the all-new turbocharged Sonata Premium.
I'm hooked on you.
Your eyes are working hard from the second you're born. And with proper care, we can help your eyes continue to work at their best. At OPSM, how we care for your eyes changes to suit whatever stage of life you're at. From helping our kids see clearer, to tools that keep older eyes healthier. Because however old they are, your eyes deserve looking after. Book an eye test today. OPSM loves eyes.
At NAB, we don't charge monthly account fees on our classic banking account, ever. That means more in your pocket and less fees. More give, less take. NAB.
If I told you there's an issue that costs Australian business $10.9 billion every year and likely affects 1 in 5 of your people, wouldn't you want to uncover it? And if you knew that every dollar invested in addressing it returned $2.30, could you ignore it? Make your people happier and more productive. Go to headsup.org.au.
Every day reveals something extraordinary in Western Australia.
Do you know about Coles Car Insurance Price Beat Guarantee?
If you're 30 or over, you're guaranteed to save when you switch your comprehensive policy to Coles Car Insurance.
I saved $174 on my 2008 Mazda 6. I saved $179 and made a great saving.
How much will we beat your current insurance price by?
Jump online or call today and get your little red quote.
Nature's Way Super Krill Oil plus Calamari combines all the benefits of Super Krill Oil for your body with high-strength DHA Calamari Oil for your mind too. Now you can look after both at once with Nature's Way Super Krill Oil plus Calamari.
Welcome back. We're talking sport now with James Bracey, although so often when we move to our sports segment, James, we're not really talking about sport. We're talking about the stupidity, alleged stupidity of sports betting.
Well, yeah, and look, it's all taken a very big turn today. It's more focused less on the players and these cocaine supply charges and more on the club, where 5 of them are involved, the Gold Coast Titans. Look, they were already struggling financially, big time. No major sponsor.
So was this on the cards anyway, was it?
Well, it was in the background. But this was the cocaine thing.
Who owned them?
Definitely. Well, there was a couple of owners who've relinquished their stake, but voluntarily in the end it had to be.
Because otherwise they were going to go bankrupt.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's it.
Or pay up somehow.
So no, and a lot of it is confidential in terms of how they'll work all that out. But look, with no major sponsor, struggling to get fans through the gates. There isn't a great track record for Gold Coast-based rugby league teams. The Seagulls Chargers, no good. South Queensland Crushers came in during the Super League murky period, no success there. But the big thing, I guess, for the National Rugby League, the Gold Coast Suns are doing all right. Their crowd figures are up. They've got Gary Ablett.
But that's bad for the Gold Coast Rugby League team because it means that they're peeling off viewers.
Well, that's it. And that's why, and this is rugby league territory. And Dave Smith, the NRL CEO, once called Queensland the heartland of rugby league. And today he said it's one of
They're struggling to sustain 3 teams.
League. Exactly, they are. And then it brings into the question, well, expansion was on the cards for the end of maybe next year, 2018. And people go, well, if there's one team struggling, you can't keep this club surviving, and how can you bring in other teams? And they were looking at the second.
There's something that Campbell Newman could do now. He could become the new CEO of the Gold Coast Titans.
Well, imagine Phil for the
I don't know how many people would turn up to watch the game if they knew Campbell was in charge at the moment.
Graham Annesley, who was the Minister for Sport for 2 years, quit halfway through his term to become the CEO of the Titans.
Yeah,
how must he be feeling now? He could be in government rather than...
Yeah, but he wasn't enjoying being a politician for some
strange reason. Do you think he's enjoying being CEO of the Titans? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Look, the day he quit politics, he came in here, and good on him for doing it, and sat in our program and spoke about that, and you can clearly see there was an element of relief. He was sad about it, but making the decision. But I tell you what, he's known as Felix, Graham Annesley. He's a former referee in the National Rugby League, and he's done well in the corporate world. God to this, but he's seen this, and he's taken this step. And it's a big one for a CEO to do, to walk to the NRL and go, hey, we need your help, come in and do it. So the National Rugby League are now the sole owners of the Gold Coast Titans. They've helped out the Newcastle Knights before. They've helped out the West Tigers when there was a split between the Balmain and the West part there. So it's not unprecedented for the NRL to give a helping hand like this to a club. But the ownership thing, it's new ground. So it's going to be very weird to actually see how it plays out from here, because Dave Smith, the NRL chief, spoke today.
Well, they're going to have to put all sorts of procedures in place to maintain arm's length and give it almost the equivalent of when you have publicly owned businesses which are independently run, independent board of directors and so on.
But it's not unlike the Newcastle Knights situation, though, is at the moment, where the NRL basically owns that club at the moment and will look to sell it.
So rugby league sounds like it's going really well.
Well, that's right. And you've also got, as Grace said, I think about $4 million went into West Tigers, and they've got to work out where their future home is. And St George apparently have had their hand out for money as well.
And the irony is South is the good news story. South, which they almost, well, they tried to cut, they did cut.
Yeah.
It got itself back in through legal challenges. It's now the premiers, it's making money. Russell Crowe was
national club champions last week as well.
They've become a very...
That's the only thing I would say that doesn't matter. But everything else in the mix, they're doing really well.
I would say a lot of people like to have a big go at David Smith, and he's had his critics. But it's the club level that are failing to run their clubs properly. I mean, the NRL can't be blamed if these clubs can't run themselves properly, I think.
Yeah, and look, the Gold Coast, we said before, they've been battling for a while. Dave Smith did say today is a great day for rugby league. I'm not quite sure whether they're the right
you
words.
Consider a future in politics.
Yeah, he thinks new start, fresh start, you know, it's great that they're... And he's right that Gold Coast Titans fans can now have some sort of... there's a bit of solidarity there. They know that players will be paid, their club still exists. He wants to keep the Titans name.
Have they given a guarantee over a period of time? Like, have they not just said the club will survive this year? Have they said...
well into the future. Well into the future.
Okay, so it could last till the end of the year?
Yeah, well, who knows?
As long as Tony Abbott's...
It was pretty strong. He seemed pretty strong on that in his press conference, that the support would be there moving forward. And the NRL has plenty of money through their broadcast deal with Channel 9, so there's no shortage of money there. They've just got to make sure it's well used.
And that's probably where the frustration is for some of these NRL clubs who do struggle. I mean, the Gold Coast are one of the teams, and probably one of the best placed teams to sign Daly Cherry Evans, who's off contract at Manly.
Oh, what a shame they've just blown that now.
That's it. They've probably lost him because of this whole thing. It was a Queenslander going home to Queensland and had the hallmarks of a great story, but it probably won't unfold now. So, but these clubs are throwing a ridiculous amount of money, and even if they can't afford it, to make sure they're keeping their player stocks up. And the Titans, if they were so fine,
well, if you don't, you fall down the ladder, you lose sponsors, you lose prize money, you become a joke, crowd sizes go down.
They don't have a base. They don't have a base. They don't have headquarters at the moment. They don't have a... they were training at a school, but because of the cocaine thing, they've had to move from Southwood School, so they're homeless. They're homeless.
Well, why stay open? Why not just shut them down?
No, I mean...
When you do give up that territory to AFL forever,
that's it.
You know, the Gold Coast is still the sixth biggest city in the country, and they should be successful.
They know there's rugby league fans there. They know there's fans there.
They've just got to try to find them.
And whilst the AFL is on the Gold Coast, the NRL will be on the Gold Coast. You can put your bottom dollar. That's why the AFL lobbed in there, because they see it as an area to make some money and get the tentacles going.
All right, before we run out of time, cricket, there's only 4.5 weeks to go in the World Cup. Where are we at?
The countdown's on. I don't even want to talk about Australia today, who play New Zealand on Saturday. I want to talk about...
You've boldly, James Bracey, right here on PVO NewsHour, has boldly come out and told us that New Zealand will win absolutely the World Cup this year.
Okay, there you go. You said it last night. I'll happily say that. They're 3 from 3 and they're co-hosting.
Who have they played?
Well, no one of great might. They did embarrass England last week, but we're next. So anyway, but Chris Gale this afternoon.
200, I saw that.
Yes. Now this guy, he's gone 19. It was against Zimbabwe.
Oh, okay.
But 19 matches without a ton, and he's one of the best batsmen when he's on. Second ball duck, it looked like, but the video review got him off there. He was out a few times off no balls, but in the end, 215 runs off 147 balls.
Extraordinary.
It was a slow burn, and he
I was going to say that took him a while. 147 balls. I would have thought it'd be faster.
His first 100 came off something like 104.
Okay.
So think about the second 100's coming off like 40.
Nothing like the Zimbabwe attack to get you out of a rut.
Yes.
Well, that'll be his one super knock of the tournament, I reckon.
Yeah, you won't see him again. But this was in Canberra this afternoon, so Zimbabwe are out there at the moment doing their thing. But when he's on, he's on. First non-Indian batsman in a one-day international to reach 200. He had 16 sixes in there, equals the world record there. So first time we've seen this from him in a very long time as well. I think that's record enough. So you'll see it all tonight on Sports Night. Peter?
Oh, you've got Gale on the show.
He's coming on.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
All right.
Live from Canberra.
Don't miss that one. All right. Thanks, James. Thanks to the panel, one and all, including the tardy. And thanks for watching this episode of PVO NewsHour. Richo and Jones is up next. We'll be back at the same time tomorrow night.